Global Business Law Takeaways from 2021, part of the series Global Business Law in 20 Minutes with Federico Vasoli. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator working throughout the states of Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And Federico Vasoli, Italian lawyer, managing partner of the MTV Global with offices in Singapore, Malta, and Vietnam. Great to be back.
Yes, thank you so much, Federico, and welcome back, Natalia. It's 2022, and our title is referencing 2021 because we're taking this opportunity to do a look back from Federico's perspective about some takeaways in global business law. And so a big welcome to everyone who might be watching or listening, because this being the first weekend of 2022, it presents all of us with a good opportunity to reassess some things and see why or how this new year should be different from the last. And so it's a good fresh start to begin by looking back. So Federico, we know that you work in Singapore, Malta, and Vietnam, right? Even though right now you're currently in Italy, right?
Yes, I'm here for the festivities.
Yes.
Happy New Year, of course.
Yes, for the New Year festivities. Great. And so when after this past year, we had been talking with you about the work you've done in these countries, especially dealing with contract law. Give us some takeaways from a global perspective when it comes to trends and things that you've seen across the last 12 months, specifically with regards to Malta, Vietnam, and Singapore. Why don't we start off with tax compliance?
Thank you, Mac. Yes, so I believe that to start a new year, it is important to take a look back and see what we've experienced in the past year, and today we're not really going to be talking so much about the law. We're going to be talking more about global trends that affect the law, because essentially I'm going to talk about taxes and compliance in a minute. If you have situations like Malta's grey listing, and you operate in finance, in financial institutions, but also if you're a normal business and you pay to Maltese bank accounts or need to receive money from a Maltese bank account, you may see some problems because of this grey listing, which is a political thing. It's a political decision, but it does impact transactions and eventually the law, because you might consider that an event of force majeure. You might want to include different payment terms in your contracts and so on and so forth. So to answer your question about taxation and compliance, I would say three things. As already mentioned, Malta has been grey listed. What does it mean? There is an international organization called the Financial Action Task Force, or GAFI in French, that is the acronym in French, that has decided to put Malta in this so-called grey list, where only a handful of countries are included. No country from the European Union, except for Malta, is in this grey list. And essentially that means that Malta has been adopting a loose approach, to say it mildly, in tackling money laundering and tax evasion. So essentially Malta is not abiding to international standards, according to this organization, in preventing financial crimes. And it is a political decision. It is publicly available, how other countries voted. For instance, the United States of America and the UK, that are normally close business partners and political partners of Malta's, decided to vote against Malta. There are some speculations. I'm not a politician, not a political analyst, but there are some speculations on why these two countries decided to vote against Malta. And essentially, Malta now will have to implement a number of measures in order to be removed from this list. The longer it stays in the list, the worse its reputation, of course. And the more complicated it will become for businesses to transact with Malta. Essentially, what will happen, very simply, is that if you have a bank account in Malta, the bank will ask a number of questions if you make payments overseas. Why are you making this payment? For what reason, etc. Now, mind you, this is something normal. It is kind of everyday business to be asked for supporting documents when you make international transactions. But in the case of Malta, it may become a bit more painful, a bit more common, and banks may require additional documents. Also the other way around, of course. If you expect to receive money in Malta, you need to prove why you are entitled to receive this money. So this is the first thing. Second thing, Vietnam in 2020, so 2 years ago, joined the common reporting standards of the OCE. What are the common reporting standards? They are standards through which, again, banks report, again, suspicious transactions to foreign tax authorities. So they see that something weird is going on and they inform tax authorities, or tax authorities can ask their counterparts in that foreign country to provide for some information. So until 2020, Vietnam was not part of the common reporting standards. It joined this system in 2020, and it was in effect in 2021. This is why we're talking about it now. What is the big takeaway in this regard? The big takeaway is that if you are a natural person and you live in Vietnam, your international, your foreign sourced income, so whatever money you make outside of Vietnam, will be known by Vietnam, which is something that did not happen before. Maybe they knew already. I'm not that naive. But officially, Vietnam will have the tools to know that you made X dollars outside of Vietnam. And because Vietnam's taxation is, like many other countries in the world, a worldwide system, that is, they tax you theoretically on all the income that you make anywhere in the world, you will be subject to pay taxes. Many people probably thought they could get away with Vietnam not being part of the common reporting standards in the past. So they were violating the law, but they thought, well, I could as well walk away with it. Now it's not going to be that easy anymore. Finally, luckily, that's a good thing. For business, the other way around. So again, Vietnam will have to report to foreign tax authorities what transactions foreign countries, foreign authorities ask Vietnam to report about. So
Federico, Federico, let me pause you for 1 second,
Sure.
just to give us perspective.
Yep.
How many countries is it exactly in the world are part of the common reporting standards?
Most
right? I just want to understand. Say what?
Yeah. The majority of countries in the world are part of the common reporting standards. So there's nothing to be worried about. It's actually good news for Vietnam because it means that Vietnam has reached a level of sophistication in its financial transactions and in combating tax evasion and money laundering. That is good. That is high enough to be part of the common reporting standards. So it's great. It's actually good news. It means that people will pay taxes, businesses will pay taxes, and Vietnam will be more effective in combating tax-related crimes. Will that happen? I don't know, of course. It is up to the local authorities and to the enforcement. But on paper now, the tools are there. So that's good. And it's, of course, bad news for those that don't pay taxes. The third takeaway is tighter regulation worldwide, tighter regulations about cryptocurrencies and operations on distributed ledger technologies and blockchains. That is, I am seeing a pendulum here. This is a very simple observation. Technology enables people and businesses to do business in a simpler and simpler way. With just one click, you do stuff. But that may mean that a lot of suspicious things, a lot of illegal or illicit things occur due to the fact that there's not so much control. There's no human control, and automation may mean that things just escape. So the reaction of the regulator is to tighten regulations. And we see this pendulum swinging over and over again. It is more and more difficult to pay money internationally using banks because they require supporting documents. And you have cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies make it super easy to pay internationally, instantly, immediately, safely, etc. Then what happens the following day? Regulators all over the world try and curb the use of cryptocurrencies. Then something new starts. You have non-fungible tokens that represent a new way to make money, and that nobody had thought about before. And then again, you have regulators trying to deal with this thing. So it's just a simple observation. It's the fact that, again, regulators are trying to put rules on technology as it is normal. It happened with the internet, it happened with emails, it happened with a number of things. I mean, I remember a few years ago when courts in Italy started accepting WhatsApp messages as instruments of evidence, as pieces of evidence in court cases. So it's only normal, it's only natural. This is the takeaway for tax and compliance.
One's dealt with that. And I understand that the most difficult part of all of that, for example, with Malta, will be that it just takes ages to receive or transfer payment. And I remember that from previous histories in the past in the global business, that any country that was being facing this sort of grey listing was then facing certain restrictions, the double checking in terms of the title of payment, in terms of the recipient, confirmations, which just then makes the normal business a nightmare, because it's also about the speediness of it. Having said that, another factor that is also important in the global business and that might have faced certain things in 2021 is the labor market. What can you say about that?
I will focus primarily on Singapore here, partly also Vietnam. Essentially, let me rephrase. Like most countries in the world, Singapore experienced an economic downturn due to COVID-19 in 2020. That also resulted in job losses, hitting primarily local employees, the local labor market, the local labor force. So Singapore is a democracy, and 2020 was an electoral year, and the government, the prime minister decided to call for a snap election that the ruling party, the PAP, won, also on a platform of protecting local jobs. So that means that in 2021, the administration made it tougher for foreigners to reside, live in Singapore, take up employment in Singapore if they don't meet a number of requirements. They could be income requirements, so you have to earn at least X to be eligible to live in Singapore. They could be qualification requirements, or they could be parity requirements. That is, the employer needs to scout for local talents, Singaporean nationals or permanent residents, before trying to find somebody suitable for that position from abroad. So if you have a local talent that fits that ticks all the requirements for that job, you have to employ the local. Now, it is understandable, of course, on one hand. On the other hand, Singapore is a very small country and is the epitome of multiculturalism and of being an international hub. So Singapore grew also thanks to the attraction of foreign talents from all over the world. The presence of people from so many different backgrounds enriched the local society with new ideas, with a strong vibe, etc. Depriving Singapore of foreign talents, because ultimately even those that have secured a job in Singapore may find Singapore too boring for them because their friends are leaving, just to put it very simply, could mean that Singapore's role as an international hub will be somehow reduced. Now, Singapore starts from here and the rest of the world is likely here. So it is still in a great position. Yet it probably goes in a direction that not everybody likes around the world, because again, it defeats the purpose of being Singapore. Vietnam has introduced similar rules, but Vietnam is a different story. It is not a global hub, of course.
Yep. Just real quick on the example you just gave about Singapore tightening its rules. Do you think that this is going to be something that sticks around, or do you think that its economy is so based on foreign investment and foreign players coming in and doing business with it that this is not going to be something that's long term?
I I don't know, but I bet it will stick, and it will hurt Singapore. Um, that is my prediction. I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah. Did you have any? So you were only going to mention labor with regards to those two countries, right?
Yes, yes. Well, the thing in Malta, if it could be of any interest for those listening to us or watching this video, is that in Malta there is a job scarcity. That is, uh, there's technically full employment in Malta, so it is very difficult to find people to take up new jobs. So if you're looking for a job, go to Malta immediately.
Thank you. So about 5 minutes left. Why don't we turn to this last takeaway dealing with COVID?
COVID. All right. So Malta, as part of Europe, has relaxed tightening measures greatly in the course of 2021, thanks to the vaccination campaign. Vietnam is one of the countries with the highest rate of vaccination worldwide, so they did really well. Kudos to Malta. Now, however, like most European countries, it is facing a surge in cases due to the Omicron variant. So new restrictions are being put in place. So, for instance, you will be required to show a vaccination certificate whenever you go to a restaurant, a public place, and so on. This is something that Italy has implemented already several months ago, and Italy is probably setting the gold standard in Europe in this type of measures. On the other hand, Asia never really relaxed. So Vietnam did really well with the pandemic, but in 2020, in May 2021, the Delta variant hit Vietnam that had not vaccinated the majority of the population yet, so it was a disaster. And it is only recovering now from the Delta variant. So essentially both sides, the Asian side and the European side, have been dealing with a lot of uncertainty, with Europe going back and forth with relaxation and tightening, relaxation and tightening. Asia has been more tight, but on the other hand, life within those countries like Vietnam and Singapore somehow to a degree has returned back to normal. So we'll see. But this poses, of course, a threat to traveling, to international business, to investments, and ultimately to our beloved contracts.
And something that really is like an umbrella to all of it is politics. I think that 2021 can also show us a lot of takeaways, how politics influence business. Can you show us some examples to that, Federico?
Well, the example that I made about Singapore is paramount. That is, the Singaporean government traditionally has always been a technocrat guided government. That is, it is data driven. It is not, historically, Singapore has not been driven by consensus. It's been driven by data. If something works in the long run, according to data, according to specialists, then the government will do it or will not do it if it doesn't work. It is one of the first times, now, again, I'm not a political analyst about Singapore, but it is one of the first time with this action on making it more difficult for foreigners to take up employment and residence in Singapore, that the Singaporean government has listened to the gut feelings of the electorate, disregarding opinions from pundits from abroad. That is, the widespread consensus abroad is maybe it is not really necessary for Singapore to tighten these measures. But this time they listen to the electorate, which is a good thing, of course, in a democracy. On the other hand, when you are constantly looking for consensus, you might be doing stuff, you might be implementing laws that the people like immediately as a placebo effect, but they're not good in the long run for the country, as it is my personal opinion with regard to these rules about foreigners taking up employment in Singapore. Now, as for Vietnam, there is a new prime minister. The big news in Vietnam is that the former president of Vietnam is no longer president. He is still, however, the Secretary General of the Communist Party, which is the top job in Vietnam. His health is somehow ailing, so his powers have been greatly reduced by the fact that he's now only holding 1 out of 2 offices. Mind you, it was not so common in Vietnam that the same person held those 2 positions simultaneously, as it is, for instance, in China. In China, you have President Xi Jinping, who is the president of China and also the Secretary General of the Communist Party. In Vietnam, that was not the case until the previous administration. Now it is back to normal. So we have 1 person holding the job of Secretary General, 1 person holding the job of president. Incidentally, it is the previous prime minister that is now president that has largely ceremonial roles, like in many countries in Europe, like Malta, like Italy, where the president is not as powerful as the the president of the US or somehow the president of France or other countries. The new administration took up power at a crucial time in Vietnam, inheriting a very good economic situation. Vietnam was kind of the winner of the pandemic in 2020 because it really managed it very well. And it also resulted as a place to invest and to do business with as an alternative to China, not necessarily to abandon China, but to add something different, to not to put all your eggs in one basket. However, with the worsening of the COVID situation, this might not necessarily be true anymore. And the government looked a bit, it looked at it as if the government was taken by surprise by what was happening with COVID in May 2021, June 2021. So this is what we can say about politics. As for Malta, there might be a general election coming up soon. There were rumors about the parliament being dissolved. Eventually, that did not happen. So the current Prime Minister, Robert Abela, who succeeded Joseph Muscat, that resigned after a number of scandals that hit the island, will remain in power.
All right. Thank you so much, Federico. So we are 2 minutes over time, and so we're going to leave it there. But as usual, appreciate your insights. And this was a good overview of takeaways from the last 12 months. And now we will see what 2022 holds. So with that, signing off until next week for our next topic. Thanks so much.
Thank you. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.